Welcome back to my channel. My name's Lucy and I share videos on the topic of long COVID, chronic fatigue syndrome and mind-body approaches that can be used to help those conditions and other mind-body conditions. Today's video, I wanted to talk about what to think about if you are fearful of getting unwell, getting another infection, getting COVID, when you still have chronic symptoms. So I recently made a video about getting unwell after recovering, and someone requested another video which focuses more on getting unwell when you still have chronic symptoms. At the beginning of the last video that I created, I mentioned that the previous video was more so focused on my experience of getting unwell after fully recovering, and so some of the things I was able to do at that time are not necessarily things that people will be able to do when they still have chronic symptoms. So that's why I wanted to make this video, because when you still have chronic symptoms, it can be more fear-inducing to have the risk of getting another infection, and often it brings up fear and concern about how we'll manage, how our bodies will respond, whether symptoms will get worse, whether it will knock us down. And I think it can be helpful just to have an outline of a few different things that might be helpful for this situation. What I share in this video is not medical advice, it's not mental health advice either. I'm sharing ideas based on my own experience and based on my reading around a mind-body approach. Different things help different people, so these are just ideas that you can listen to and decide whether these are going to be helpful for you or not, or things you can try and decide whether they're valuable in your situation. Often when people are unwell, it's very natural to have a fear of getting another infection, because when we have chronic symptoms, often we see our body as not functioning at its best. We might believe that our immunity is low. For some people that is the case, for others it's not the case, but their body is so reactive that it feels like their immune system is not working properly. And often it means that we don't feel like we're in a strong position to fight off another infection or virus. And on top of that, we've had the past experiences of being unwell and getting chronic symptoms after that. So it can be fear-inducing to think about the possibility of symptoms becoming chronic, or symptoms that are already chronic becoming worse. So I wanted to talk about a few simple ideas that could be helpful in this scenario. So it might be the case that you do physically get worse when you have a current infection, whether it's COVID, whether it's the flu, whether it's a bacterial infection, a viral infection. It's normal to feel physically worse. And I think it can, even though it's so obvious, it can be helpful to remind ourselves of this, that actually a normal, healthy person doesn't feel good when they get these infections. So it's not abnormal if you do feel rubbish, if you have an awful cold, if you feel nauseous, if you feel the symptoms of the current infection. Often there's also a fear of feeling worse in the long run, that symptoms will get worse going forward. And depending on your experience using a mind-body approach, and depending how much you believe that symptoms are generated by the brain and the nervous system, that is going to affect how much you fear that symptoms will continue. Evidence that the mind-body approach applies to you can be really helpful, because if you can think about how this approach applies to you, then you might already know of or be able to research mind-body tools that will help you with those symptoms. So if symptoms do start to linger, there will be things that you can do about it. You can get better. You're not necessarily going to be getting worse with nothing to do, where it's completely out of your control. So this type of evidence can include a list of times that emotions caused symptoms, or there was an emotional trigger that had a role to play in creating symptoms. It could also be helpful in terms of looking at inconsistencies in times that you were unwell and you had long-term symptoms afterwards. So there may have been times in the past where you caught a cold and it didn't turn into long-term symptoms, or even when you already had CFS or long COVID, maybe you got another infection on top and it didn't make you worse. So looking at inconsistencies that contradict the idea that you are definitely going to get worse because of having a new current infection is really useful. Our brains are so used to thinking of the worst case scenario and being hypervigilant of threats, and getting an illness when you're already suffering with chronic symptoms is a form of a threat. But often we don't think about all of the ways that our bodies are capable of managing difficult situations. So writing a list of evidence about why your body is strong and healthy can be really helpful. How maybe you've had infections in the past and your body was able to fight it off. How maybe in the past when you got COVID you didn't have a temperature. Even having a temperature could be a good sign, because you could say, oh well, my body responded appropriately. It gave me a temperature because it needed to fight off this infection. It could be that there was a time when your whole family got the flu but you didn't catch it. So it's giving yourself evidence that your body is able to fight off infection. This evidence can also include feedback that you may have received from doctors. So sometimes when you go to the doctor with chronic symptoms and they tell you nothing's wrong, or all of your blood tests have come back fine, it can be a little bit disappointing if you want to find an answer to your chronic symptoms. But it's also really good to know that your body is okay, because if there was something seriously wrong with your immune system and your body, if you had low immunity, then maybe there would be more cause of concern around catching a virus, because your body is not able to fight off infection in the way that someone else's is. Having evidence to support both how the mind-body approach applies to you and also how your body is strong and capable and healthy can be really great. I got my wisdom teeth out about 6 months ago. I got 2 out on the one side. And when I went back 1 week later for a review, the dental surgeon said, your gums have healed so quickly. Your body has such great healing power. And at the time, because I knew about this mind-body approach, I thought, oh, that is excellent evidence for me to remember, to reflect on the next time I ever get unwell, or I get a bad cut, or I have some type of surgery or something, that my body is able to heal really quickly. I suspect if this had happened in the past, I would have dismissed it, because I had an underlying belief that my body wasn't actually very capable, that there was always something wrong with my nervous system, that I had chronic pain, that my nervous system wasn't right, that if anyone was to get unwell, it would be me. So if you've had those sorts of beliefs for years, it can take a while to actually identify evidence, even when it's right in front of your face, that your body is good at fighting infection, that it's good at healing, that it has really great ways of getting you through a difficult physical experience or infection. So the other thing that is really helpful to focus on when getting an infection whilst you still have chronic symptoms is thinking about how safe you feel and how you can generate feelings of safety. So if you have constant thoughts of, oh no, I've got an infection, I'm going to get worse, how am I going to cope? What if I need to go to the hospital? My body's not okay, I'm not okay. those are naturally fear-inducing thoughts and concerns. And it might be that one part of you is freaking out and is really scared because of getting this new infection. And it's completely valid for a part of you to get anxious because you've had a difficult experience by having chronic symptoms, and your baseline of normal life already includes chronic symptoms. So validating that it's okay that a part of you feels scared, it's normal that a part of you feels scared, can be really helpful. It can just help as well with noticing that this is an area you could get sucked into. This feeling and thought cycle of fear and concern and worry. And it's okay to acknowledge that and to notice that a part is anxious, and there's very valid reasons for that. But it can also be helpful to really think about, well, what's the response that's going to help me more in this situation? Feeling safe is really important for the nervous system to relax, to calm down, and for your body to just work the way it needs to work, for it to go into that rest and digest state. And if you can help yourself feel safe in a situation when you have an infection, it can be really helpful for any challenges that arise, whether they're to do with symptoms or to do with any other general challenges in life. So ways of feeling safe can vary for person to person, but reminding yourself that you are okay, obviously getting medical help if you need medical help, if you feel that there's something that needs to be checked by a doctor, get that checked. If they say you're okay, reflecting again and again on the fact that the doctor already said you're okay, and that this is good reassurance that you are okay, that you don't need to worry, that your body will take time to fight the infection and it won't last forever, that it doesn't mean that the symptoms will necessarily get worse. So this can involve self-talk, reassuring yourself that your body is okay, that you're safe, that you can be with the fear of the symptoms, that you can be with the fear of having a current infection, that you know what to do in this situation. So normally when we get an infection, we have to rest. We eat less because we're less hungry or we're nauseous. Maybe we have a temperature and we just have to get through the day of being unwell and being kind to our body. So allowing yourself to watch some comedy or to listen to an interesting podcast and just to take it easy. In terms of activity, it's very individual. So even people with chronic symptoms, for some people it can help to do very light activity, even with a current infection. But that's going to vary a lot person to person. And the best thing to do is to do things very, very small. So maybe some stretching. If you normally are able to do an hour of yoga, rather than doing an hour of yoga, just doing some stretching to allow your body to move, to allow your muscles to stretch and relax. If you're already able to go for a longer walk when you are with chronic symptoms, it might be appropriate to do something like a short walk when you have a current infection. But also listening to your body, because with chronic symptoms, sometimes it's hard to listen to our body. We don't know what our body signals actually mean. But with a current infection, if you feel tired, you do need to rest. It is important to listen to your body. So it's really thinking about how you can rest and take care of yourself whilst you're unwell, and being as kind to yourself as possible. Indulging in things that you enjoy can generate safety because often when we don't feel safe, when we feel fearful, we don't tend to watch something enjoyable or funny. We tend to start researching symptoms. We tend to start Googling what's the worst thing that could happen with this particular illness. We tend to get into a cycle of feeling really low, feeling really disappointed. And it's okay to validate those feelings, but you don't want to indulge too much in getting stuck and believing those thoughts and getting stuck in a downward cycle. Whenever a new drug is tested, it's compared to a placebo drug. And that shows how great our minds are at believing, if we believe that a treatment will work, our bodies actually respond by starting to feel better. And a lot of drugs don't actually perform an awful lot better than a placebo. Giving yourself a placebo by just telling yourself, I'm strong, I'm capable, my body is doing really well. Feeding yourself positive information about how you're the type of person that your body's not going to struggle with this particular infection, that you know that the chronic symptoms are a result of a mind-body experience, which means that your body is capable of being physically well and responding well in these situations of infection. The other thing to think about can be time frame. So if you are unwell with a current infection, it depends on the infection, but normally a GP will give advice that it'll take your body 2 to 3 weeks at maximum for your body to fight off that infection. So if after 3 weeks you still have symptoms to do with the current infection, it might be worth going back to a doctor, but also starting to think, are some of these symptoms mind-body? Are there any other triggers aside from the infection itself? Are there any emotional triggers? How have I been feeling in terms of fear, in terms of doubt, in terms of feeling low or feeling triggered by this event emotionally? Are there ways I can reflect on that? Are there ways that I can express some of those feelings? What was my experience like of being unwell in terms of the help that I received, in terms of being cared for, in terms of my thoughts about other people and how much they would help me or how much they would not help me? So thinking about other potential ways that a mind-body cause could be affecting you at that point in time. Another thing to think about is what is in your control in this situation. It is really annoying to get an infection when you're already struggling with chronic symptoms. But also, this is a normal part of life where people with young children get infections because their children catch something in the nursery, or when at Christmas time families gather and infection tends to spread, or just bad luck, you sat beside someone on a plane and you ended up ill afterwards. There's so many ways of catching a virus that are out of our control, and if we are trying to prevent ourselves from getting unwell all of the time, we are limiting our lives. So for most people, they're happy to risk getting those infections, even though it might affect their work, it might affect being able to look after their children, it might affect other areas in their life. But the thing about this for people who have had chronic symptoms is it can be more triggering for obvious reasons, and it can make us feel like we're not in control all over again, or it can make us bring up feelings of resentment because we've already experienced so much in terms of chronic symptoms and being limited. And so really thinking about what makes it so triggering for you, and how can you manage that? How can you reflect on that? And also, I think it's helpful just to acknowledge that being unwell is a part of life, because some people get really perfectionist about not wanting to become unwell again, or not wanting to risk making their situation worse if they already have chronic symptoms. And I completely understand why that is, because who wants to feel worse after spending years of being limited? If we can be at peace with the idea of getting infected again with some type of virus or flu or COVID, if we're at peace with that, the potential of that happening, we can respond much better. And it also means that we've probably processed things that have happened in the past. If we really fear getting unwell again, getting some type of virus again, having a virus with chronic symptoms, or fear that the virus that we get will make our chronic symptoms worse, then it's a challenge to experience getting unwell again, but it could be a good learning experience. It could create new experiences of gathering evidence that show you that that doesn't happen. And when I say that doesn't happen, sometimes that does happen, that people get a virus and their chronic symptoms get worse. But it doesn't mean that you will get worse and worse and worse and be unwell forever. There is hope that you can get better, and there is hope that it doesn't necessarily mean that your chronic symptoms will get worse either. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the virus was the reason that someone's chronic symptoms got worse. It could be related to repressed emotions, predictive processing. It could be related to other stressors that were happening when that person got unwell. It could be related to past trauma of being unwell, because some people who got COVID in the first round, it was a very traumatic experience and they went to hospital and it was very difficult. Thinking about what's in your control in these situations, and knowing that even if it is challenging, there will be something that you can reflect on and learn, can be really useful. In the last video that I created, where I was talking about my experience of getting unwell after recovering, I gave one example of being unwell when I still had chronic symptoms. And at the time, I just kept thinking about how well my body was doing despite having COVID again, compared to a year before when I was physically much worse and I had chronic fatigue or long COVID, but I didn't have a current infection. And I think having those thoughts again and again and again, oh, but I'm still able to walk around the house now. Oh, but I'm still able to do this. That must mean my body is doing well and I'm okay. I think that was really helpful for me. So these are just a few ideas, and I think there might be other ideas that can be helpful for these situations. It's natural to feel triggered by being unwell. I have felt anxious when I've got unwell again. I've got anxious that when I've noticed fatigue after getting another virus. I've worked with many clients who fear getting unwell again, because being unwell with chronic symptoms is not easy. It doesn't exactly set you up to look forward to getting another virus of some kind. But it is possible to work through it, and it's possible to come out the other side without your symptoms getting worse. Please share in the comments if there's anything that you have found really helpful when you've had a current infection, and what has helped you during that time. Because these are just a few of my ideas, but maybe your ideas will be helpful to other people. And there are definitely more things out there that could be helpful during a time like this. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe. If there's a particular topic that you want me to talk about, feel free to leave it in the comments below. If you feel as though you'd benefit from coaching, for instance, if you really fear getting unwell again and it's holding you back in life, you feel like you can't go out, or you can't progress because you're so scared of getting reinfected, or if you feel as though you need help and support applying a mind-body approach to your recovery, have a look in the description. There's a link to booking a call with me, and sometimes having support with those aspects can be really useful so that you can move forward and get back to life as normal. If you'd like to follow me on Instagram or join the Facebook group, there are links in the description as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.